experience, part 8, navigating reality, knowing the universe in a cherry. Knowing the universe in a cherry and finding heaven in your own being. This is what we're going to talk about today. So I'm holding in my hand a cherry, and here's another one. And here is a third one. And here is a fourth one. So anybody looking at these objects will say they are cherries, right? But they all look a little different. Slight variation in colors and shapes. They smell like cherries, but they're slightly different. They taste like cherries, but the flavor is slightly different. And when I touch them, the texture, the sensation is slightly different. In other words, these are unique cherries. Okay? They're all different. One's from California, another is from Oregon, a third is from the Mediterranean somewhere, and a fourth is from California. And what do they reflect? What do these cherries reflect? Well, let's go bit by bit. This one's from California, from a farm in California. And what does it reflect? Well, it reflects the soil, the ecosystem of the earth, the bugs and the bees and the birds, and the entire flora and fauna of the genetic information, which we call the microbiome, in this particular farm in California. Okay, and this one reflects the same microbial gene expression from another place, maybe in Turkey. Okay, so this has the flavor of California, the other of Turkey, Oregon, etc. Not only the flavor, the smell, the look, the feel, the touch, the romance. And not only that, but all the people who work in the farms, their families, their ancestors, the other sentient beings they interact with, the other food they eat, their soil, the weather, the birds, the bees, the farmers, the trade unions, the packagers, the retailers, the cherry trees, the stars. The whole universe is right there in the cherry because it shares the same genes as you and me. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to eat it. Same genetic information, same DNA as you and me. So, what is the difference between this and your physical body? Same atoms, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, manufactured in the crucible of stars. Long time ago, after the Big Bang. And if, depending on which construct you like, the Big Bang, then this is a history of 14 billion years. But if you believe in instant creation, and this is emerging from the quantum vacuum right now, as the random movement of particles and force fields, then this is the universe manifesting right now as a cherry, right this moment as a cherry. And those atoms and particles, if you actually stop looking at them, they evolve into waves of possibility in mathematical infinite space. So this is the emergence as a cherry of the total universe represented in a cherry. Okay. This is what William Blake meant when he said, to see a world in a grain of sand and a heaven in a wildflower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. So right now we explained this cherry as both the quantum vacuum and the Big Bang, now with this taste, flavor, sensation, color, and shape. One way of looking at it, right? But the way I've explained it right now is a scientific materialistic interpretation of the cherry, which is based on what I've previously called naive realism. So, naive realism posits a reality independent of consciousness. It implies a reality we don't experience. It also implies a reality we cannot experience. A reality that is not experienceable. What does it mean? It means nothing. If it can't be tested, whose reality is it? Okay, in every experience, whether it is perceptual or mental, awareness has to be present. Awareness has to be present in order to have the experience that we call cherry. Okay? Now, of course, if we try to figure this out, how do we experience a cherry? Then let us look at the scientific explanation of how we experience a cherry, or for that matter, anything else. So in vertebrates, that is in biological organisms that have a spinal cord, a vertebral column, something called the neuroectoderm gives rise to several organs in your body. Neuroectoderm. Neuro means brain or nervous tissue. Ectoderm means this layer, germ layer, that we also call the skin. The neuroectoderm gives rise to hair, to skin, to nails, in animals to hooves, and also the lens of the eye. It is also the epithelium of sense organs, all the sense organs, the nasal cavity, the sinuses, the mouth, but also the sense organs, eyes, ears, tongue, nose, skin. Skin is the largest sense organ, and the skin has receptors, which are modified skin, basically, that touch every experience. So when you see something, you're touching the experience that we call color, shape, and form. When you hear something, you're touching the experience that we call sound. So hearing is a mode of knowing, and what is known as sound. Seeing is a mode of knowing, and what you see is color, shape, and form. Similarly, taste and smell and sensation and thought and feeling and emotion are all forms of knowing. So modes of knowing give us the experience of what we call the expression of our sensory activity. Sound, flavor, fragrance, sensation, hardness, softness, color, shape, form. All these are modes of knowing. Okay? Modes of knowing, both perceptual but also mental. Mental modes of knowing, feeling, thinking, reflecting, contemplating, visualizing, imagining, remembering, desiring. These are all modes of knowing. And in a way, every mode of knowing is touching an experience. When you look at the stars at night, or even the moon and the sun, your eyes are touching the sky. Your eyes are touching the Milky Way galaxy, okay, in the form of photons. Those photons are sending information as electricity to your brain. In the brain, there is electrochemistry, and voila, you see stars, moon, and sky. You touch the stars, moon, and sky with your eyes. With your eyes. The eyes are an activity that we call seeing. Okay? The eyes are an activity that we call seeing. The ears an activity that we call hearing. The skin is an activity that we call sensing. And similarly, taste and smell are activities that give us experience of fragrance and flavor. So you see, what we call our sensory activity is the magical activity that turns formless into form and phenomena. Everything begins with the formless. Think right now of a beautiful sunset and you see an image. You converted formless awareness into that image. Look here, you see a painting, and suddenly from formless experience or another experience, that experience. So every sensory activity, every thought, every emotion, every feeling, every image, every impulse of intelligence, and that's all we can call it, is consciousness modifying itself into an entangled experience that we call everyday reality. However, based on what I've said just now, we cannot explain how the vibration of air molecules ultimately results in sound in consciousness, because there's no sound in consciousness. Based on what I've said right now, how do photons in various vibrations create the experience of color or shape or form in consciousness? Because there's no color, shape or form in the brain. We don't know. And that's called the hard problem of consciousness. And I think there's a solution to it. We're asking the wrong questions. When we say, how do vibrations of air molecules create hearing, or how do photons create shape, color, and form, or the experience of objects? Maybe we are asking the wrong question. So let's turn this around and look at hearing, seeing, touching, sensing, tasting, smelling, feeling, thinking, imagining as modes of knowing. Awareness, which is you, non-local, fundamental, not in space-time, is modifying itself into modes of knowing, and those modes of knowing give us the experience that we call sound, flavor, fragrance, sensation, image, feeling, and thought. So, in reality, we experience not objects, we experience concepts. The cherry is a concept for this experience. What is the experience? Flavor, fragrance, color, shape, form, texture, sound as I bite into it. None of those things are actually physical entities. They are modulation of awareness. Anything that I said right now, color, shape, form, flavor, fragrance, sensation, sound, none of those experiences actually have a location in the physical world. So we think we experience a cherry, but what we're experiencing is ourself as a cherry. We're experiencing ourselves as this changing body. We experience ourselves as those objects behind me. We experience ourselves as you and me. And that self is obviously not the object. Because actually when we start to look for an object, we can't find it. We cannot, when we seriously look for a physical world, it's not to be found. When we seriously look for something called a physical body, it's not to be found. It's a shifting experience, intermittent flow of sensations. Touch, that's it. We touch, and we touch through intention. The eyes are an activity that we call seeing. The ears are an activity we call hearing. The taste buds are an activity that we call tasting. Gives us the experience of flavor. And so too, for any sense organ, there are activities with which we touch experience. And not only do we touch experience, we create the experience. And then we call it a book, a microphone, a hand, a Milky Way galaxy. Distance in space-time, causality in space-time, these are all concepts. The word cherry is a concept experience. The word hand or body is a concept for an experience. And the experience is not physical. So every experience is non-local. Now, to complicate this, there are about 2 to 4% of people in the world who are synesthetes. They have crossover of the senses, mix and match the senses. So synesthetes can see music as color. When they hear and taste textures, that's very confusing for the rest of us. And so a synesthete might taste this, literally taste this, and experience sensations like roundedness, smoothness, roughness, pointedness. So synesthetes, when they eat food, can experience all kinds of sensations. And maybe they can see a taste, smell a color, see a sensation, taste a color. So red becomes a taste. They can sense a sound, and they can sense through their bodies, maybe music, or sense through their body, maybe a color, or sense through their body, maybe a starlit sky. When we understand synesthesia, it's obvious that we are creating the experience through a particular entangled mode of knowing of sensations, images, feelings, thoughts, perceptions, that we end up calling cherries and microphones and bodies and stars and galaxies. So when we understand this, we also understand that every experience is non-local. And the appearance of locality, location in space and time, distance in space and time. Where I am right now is San Diego, and Calcutta is far away. But actually, distance in space and time is a change in state of experience, state of fluctuation of awareness. The body-mind itself is a state of fluctuation of awareness that goes along with Calcutta or Mumbai or a starlit sky. Therefore, we experience not objects, we experience concepts, and none of these has a physical identity. No object that we experience is essentially a physical identity. It's a mode of knowing and experience given labels. This is given a label, solid, but actually it's an experience that we call hardness. This is a label that we call liquid to the saliva, but it's an experience called wetness. This is an experience that we call microphone, but in reality it's an experience of shape, color, form, right? The word microphone is a concept, a symbolic representation of you and me. The book is a concept. So everything that you see is actually a concept. And who conceptualizes? What is it that conceptualizes? Obviously consciousness, right? Consciousness conceptualizes, conceives. That it constructs the notion of an object based on the entanglement of touch, of sensing. That's it. Touch. Touch the light, touch the sensation, touch the color, touch the sound through attention and intention. Attention and intention modifies the entanglement and constructs the object. That's why, going back to our basic idea, Consciousness conceives, governs, constructs, and becomes everything that we call reality, including the reality that we call my body, or my mind, or my family, or my relationships, or my community. But actually, even that which I call my is a concept, and there is only awareness ceaselessly fluctuating with qualities of awareness that we call qualia, that we then experience as solid matter, or liquid matter, or vaporous matter, or quantum vacuum as a concept, or whatever else we come up with. Grand unified field theories are concepts to experience, to explain certain experience. Concepts to explain the experience that we call gravity, the experience that we call electricity, the experience that we call magnetism, the experience that we call particles or force fields. Before we can call them such entities, they are modulations of the self, symbolically represented as those entities. But those entities are actually changing qualities of the self. The self is experiencing itself as the microphone, as the body, as the book, as the computer, as you, as me. So this is the self, both of the individual and of the universe. So I'm sure you remember that poem of William Blake, to see a world in a grain of sand and a heaven in a wildflower. Hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. When we understand what Blake is saying, we are understanding that he woke up to reality. That waking, dreaming, sleeping actually have consciousness as their content and reality. And sensory experiences are modifications of consciousness within consciousness. So we are engulfed in, pervaded by, and contained in an activities of awareness called qualia. Qualia are qualities of awareness that show up in the world as constructs of matter, of mind, of body, of universe, ultimately connected to subtle experiences, such as subtle sound, subtle sensation, subtle smell, and even subtle images in the mind, and subtle fluctuations of consciousness that we call thought. These are the raw materials of experience, made out of consciousness, known in consciousness, structured in consciousness, labeled in consciousness, and even the theories about them are space-time events in consciousness. As Max Planck said, you cannot get behind consciousness. So what is this cherry? It is you. It's the entire universe as this. This experience. When you understand this, you realize that every experience is the divine formless turning itself into form and phenomena. You are the divine formless. Perceptual activity is a divine activity that converts the formless into form. And then with that come other entangled experiences. Feeling of joy, looking at a strawberry, seeing the whole universe. The delight of experiencing it. The nourishment I get from it. And so many people involved, so many sentient beings of all, people and farmers and trades and retailers and customers and transport systems and economies and trade treaties, just to talk about human entanglement, but then the entanglement of the birds, the bees, the migration patterns, the weather, the stars, the sky, the infinite void, and the whole history of creation in a cherry. So you can know the universe in a cherry. And what is heaven is the ability to know that you can choose experiences, you can interpret experiences. Remember that little prayer from the Course in Miracles. I am responsible for what I see. I choose the feelings I experience. And everything that seems to happen to me, doesn't happen to me, seems to happen to me, I ask for and receive as I have asked. This is the ultimate responsibility, which is when I navigate reality, I know the universe in every experience, in a cherry, in a microphone, in a cell phone, in a book, in a statue. Wherever I go, there is only the divine. This is divine consciousness, where God is not difficult to find, God is impossible to avoid, because there is only the divine modifying itself into everything that we call the universe. So today's lesson, navigating reality, knowing the universe in a cherry, and heaven in your being. Heaven means the ability to change states in order to manifest different lokas. Lokas are locations of experience in space-time, because location itself is a concept. In reality, they're only fluctuating states of being. All heavens, all purgatories, all hells, everything that we call the world. And right now, that experience has turned into a nightmare. Right? Social injustice, economic injustice, racism, bigotry, hatred, war, pestilence, pandemics, economic disasters. What does it all mean? It means that we have created a nightmare by not knowing that even a cherry is a clue to the magnificence of being. Matter, a piece of paper. It's a tree, it's an ecosystem, it's stars, sun, sky, moon, the infinite void, and the whole history of the universe. So when we can see that, when we can feel that, it becomes impossible to hurt another being, because they are you. That's what the expression Ubuntu means. I am because you are, and you are because I am, and I am is you, me, and everything else. Okay. Until tomorrow, my friends, this is Deepak. Ubuntu. I am because you are. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.